Good evening. We're very happy to have you here. My name is Ed Stork. I'm president-elect of the Laguna Beach Historical Society, and we welcome you all. And we're happy you're here, and we hope that you'll join in us for other activities as well as this one. We have a membership booth at the back, and we have various other activities going, and we're always looking for volunteers. And a couple people want to make a short announcement here, so go ahead and I'll do that before we start.
Hi. My name is Ann Christoph, and I just want, since this is a historical society, I thought you might want to know that we had a little incident about preserving historic trees in front of the lumberyard last week. Carol Lloyd is here, and her family, the Rogers family, planted the grove of eucalyptus in the downtown area, after which Forest Avenue was named. And the two eucalyptus at the lumberyard were the last remaining ones downtown of that historic grove from roughly 1880. And we almost lost both of them. Thanks to Tony Eisman and Steve Dictorow, who were able to stop that construction. So one of the trees has been lost. The other one is in question. It was stopped. You'll see that there's foliage up at the top. The trunk itself has been cut. All the branches have been cut off. So this will be pending before the city council, and we should all be alert to when that might be coming up to make sure that we preserve our historic trees. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sandra Desmond, or Sandy. I'm on the board of the Historical Society. My thing right now is if you'd ever like to sign up as a docent, we can show you easily how to unlock the Murphy Smith bungalow, turn on the lights, put out the sign that says open. It's really easy, and work 3 hours on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's really easy, and sometimes we just need substitutes, like a substitute teacher. If some of our regular people can't make it, they would have a little substitute list to call, and yes, you could do it just, haphazardly like I do. Anyway, thank you so much. On our website, it has phone numbers and address, how to get in touch. But thank you so much.
If you're interested in that, I'm the coordinator of the volunteers at the bungalow. So if you're interested tonight, you could talk to me tonight. Otherwise, go on the website. I would like now to introduce our speaker and get right into it, because I think it's going to be very enjoyable and informative. Neil Purcell has been in this area for many, many years. And on here he put when he was born, and it turns out I'm born the same time, so I'm not going to tell you when it was. You just have to guess. But he was born in Orange and grew up in Newport Beach and went to schools there, and then also went to Orange Coast College, University of Redlands, the LA Police Department Academy, the FBI Academy, the various other FBI and law enforcement schools. He has a lot of background in that area. I better put my glasses on, I'll know this better. In 1961, he joined the Newport Beach Police Department. And in 1968, he joined the Laguna Beach Police Department. And he proceeded through the ranks. He started in the narcotics division and spent a lot of time there. He was a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and promoted to chief of police in 1981. After he retired from the Laguna Beach Historical Society, which is 1997, as I read it here.
Laguna Beach Police Department.
Police Department, yeah, what did I say?
Historical.
Yeah, Historical Society, I got mixed up. He went and became a chief of police again in Northern California for a while. And he was obviously involved in the Christmas, whatever we got, I don't know what to call it, happening, the Christmas happening. And with no further hesitation, I introduce to you Neil Purcell.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
There you go, now he's on.
How about now? Great. Thank you very much, and I thank Jane for contacting me, and was reluctant, as she knows, I said, I put that out of my mind 45 years ago. And I don't know what all I can remember about it. She said, well, I know you can do it. You can do it. So thank you, Jane, for the invitation. And I did stretch my mind, believe me. And I had to kind of dig down deep because when you get in your mid-70s, you don't quite think clearly anymore, and you forget things. So. But we are at 70 years old, 70, I'm 76. We're all in good shape. And it's so nice to see some great people here. I've been looking since we lived in Montana for the last 19 years. And we've been back here now a year living in Laguna Woods. And the one person I kept looking for on Forest Avenue as we sit there and have a mocha before they close Scandia down, was Arnold Haino. And I says, "What?" And this is the first I've seen him since we've been back over a little over a year now. It was so nice to see Arnold. So, and there's many others here. Barbara Diamond's another one that been the love of my life for many, many years, and she's just a great person. So, a couple of questions first. How many here? Pardon me. How many here tonight were here in Christmas 1970? Well, that's a good number. That's great. How many of you had relatives or friends that weren't allowed into town because of the roadblocks for Christmas dinner? Yeah, that was the sad part. Very sad that occurred. I'm going to give a little background leading up to this Christmas happening because I think it's important to kind of know how it came to the police department's attention and what we had to do to really figure out, was this going to be a true happening or not, and where was it going to be, and this and that. So that's kind of the background I'll give you first. In 1970, we had a fairly new police chief by the name of Kenneth Huck. And he came from the Bay Area and was very new to Laguna Beach at the time. We had lieutenants were in charge of various divisions of the police department and all. But a few months after that, promotions were given. The lieutenants went to captains. We had Captain Dave Brown. We had Captain Frank Chopin. Some of you may know both of those gentlemen. And I was promoted to sergeant in 1970, but remained in charge of investigations, but a working narcotic officer, which I was doing since about March of 1969 here for Laguna Beach. It was in about October of 1970, the department was hiring 2 experienced officers from agencies outside of this whole area. And I went to Chief Huck, and because I answered directly to him, although we had 2 captains, they answered to him too, but he had me, because of narcotics and investigations, he had me answering to him, which was kind of an uncomfortable situation when I'm a sergeant and I'm dealing with, should have been a little higher rank for that if I'm going to be equal with my counterparts, the 2 captains. So that was a little bit of a rub internally with the captains, but they accepted it and we worked well together. But I asked him, since we had 2 new officers coming on board, could I have them for a month or a month and a half, have them kind of get grubby looking and whatnot, and see if we can't throw some of these dope dealers in jail by them buying drugs from them, and have them approached by dope dealers and all that kind of stuff. And so he thought about it and he says, okay, we can do that. So I said, we have big problems at that time around the Taco Bell in the late 60s and 70s. That was a magnet for a lot of the Marines, unfortunately, that would come down from Camp Pendleton, and they were looking at where they could buy pot and LSD and whatever else they wanted. And we'd made a lot of arrests. Some of you probably remember Sergeant Norm Babcock. He and I worked together for about a little over a year together, and we made a lot of arrests down there. But the more arrests we made, it seemed like the more dopers showed up. We just made room for them, I guess. But I needed somebody, though, to see if they could not work undercover there and will really nail some of these people. We had the Del Camino Hotel at the time. Nothing like you see today, but that was just a hotel full of dope, and a lot of dope dealing out of there. We had the beaches from Main Street clear down to Bluebird that in the evenings were just a magnet for people to go down there, buy drugs, sell drugs, and use drugs. So that was a real problem. And then, of course, out in the canyon, Woodland Drive and Roosevelt Lane and Victory Walk, that little area right out there, we have the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, which was a growing group. And they were basically the main suppliers for a lot of the Orange Sunshine LSD and marijuana and hashish. That was their big thing there. And so I just needed, at the time, we didn't have state narcotics that were helping local agencies like ours. And so we were on our own. And so with assistance from Newport Beach and San Clemente police departments, their narcotic officers, and then myself and Norm Babcock at the time, then we worked together, but we needed some undercover officers. So these two officers had prior experience, and they dirtied up pretty quickly. I couldn't believe how fast both of them grew some beards, and we did buy some excellent wigs for them, and we bought some old from Grant's military store up in Costa Mesa, some fatigues and army-type jackets and whatnot that were pretty popular in that time, and because it was going to get cold as we got closer to January. And they really dirtied up. I couldn't believe it in a week's time how they looked. I mean, they looked just like the creeps that we were dealing with out in the street. And so they were doing a good job. They started buying dope down there at all these places I'm talking about. And of course, we weren't making arrests then. We're just having uniform officers stop a person after they sold and whatnot to get them ID'd and whatnot, and figured, down the road we'll have arrests made, but not now, because we didn't want to burn these officers. We didn't want them going to court. They were told that they could not come here to this police department, so we did not. We wanted them to just really get in deep with anybody that they could. It was about the 15th or so of October, they came to me and they said, we're picking up some information that there's a group here in town, and it's a couple of the people that have some of the hippie type shops and whatnot. They're trying to get together a big happening, a whole, people from outside, other states and whatnot, to have a Christmas happening, much like Woodstock in upper state New York. And so a few days later, they're coming to me saying, during the orientation, when you took us around, you took us over here, what do you call that park, that big park over there? And I said, Heisler Park? Yeah, Heisler Park. They say that's what they want to have, and they're expecting at least 15,000 people, and they want to have it in Heisler Park. And I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, I just can't imagine that. And because I recall, I grew up in Balboa, but coming to Laguna a lot, Heisler Park was the place where you wanted to go. And of course, working here almost 2 years then, I thought there's just no way. First of all, you're not going to have a group like that in there and expect that there will be even one bush left by the time they get through tromping or burning them or whatever. So I shared this with the new chief, newer chief, and I said, that just can't happen there. And he says, well, where else could they go? I said, I don't know at this point. But I said, they can't go there. Well, it was about a week later, my guys came to me, and each day we saw each other. We'd meet out in the canyon, different places. And they said, hey, is there a place, a lover's lane or something out in the canyon? And I said, well, yeah, we call it that. And they said, well, where is that exactly? And I said, well, it's just beyond the turnoff of Laguna Canyon Road in El Toro. You go out. Today it's now the Jim Dilley Park. And I said, that's a big grove of sycamore trees, and it's a big, wide area and whatnot. And they said, yeah, that's the way they described it. And lovers go out there. And I said, yeah, we catch them out there and run them out now and then. I said, it's within our city limits, but it's the Irvine Company property. But the fence has been torn down several times, and I think Irvine's just given up on that section. So they said, well, they're talking about that now. So I went to the chief, and I told him, well, they're looking now out here. I said, that if they're going to have it, that's the place to have it. But I said, it's within our city limits, chief, but it's Irvine property. And he didn't know a lot about Irvine. I said, well, Irvine is Orange County. I mean, it is monstrous. And I said, the city of Irvine, you're familiar with that? Yes. I said, that was all orange groves when I was a kid growing up. So I said, a lot of Irvine properties is turned into cities now. But I said, that is out our canyon, and we do patrol out there on it. So he says, well, I'll talk to the city manager, but that sounds like that's the place. Can your guys, start pushing that? And that's exactly what they did. And they started coming up with the neat place. All the verbiage they were using was, yeah, we sleep out there in our sleeping bags. The cops don't bug in, all this kind of stuff. And so they came back in a few days, and they told me, well, it's going to be there. That's what they're going to do. And they want more people. They're going to do everything they can to get all kinds of people. As time went on, they kept coming back and feeding information to me that, we're going to, they're looking at trying to get equipment out there. They're wondering how they're going to build a stage. They need lumber. They need a big generator and all this kind of stuff. And so one of my other talks with the chief was, they need all this type of stuff. What about if we were to furnish the generator? This will really put my guys in very tight with the organizers of this. And I said, maybe, the city rents one and this and that. I said, they were looking for lumber or someone to donate lumber or come up with that. So he said, well, see what you can do about a generator. This makes sense to me. That'll at least anchor them out there, and they won't be thinking about this Heisler Park. So my guys laid down a real bunch of bull with them and whatnot, some of these organizers, and said, yeah, we got a friend of a friend that has a great big generator and whatnot. He lives out there in the El Toro, wherever El Toro is, because, we just came down from Northern California, so we don't know much, but wherever there's a town out there, I guess, and he has a big generator. Well, it was a rental place, and the rental agency was really reluctant, but the agreement was, if that thing gets stolen, if it gets burned up, or whatever happens to it, Laguna Beach is going to replace it. And so that was a guarantee. And so we got an old dilapidated truck and brought this generator down and put it on out there at Sycamore Hills. So that kind of fermented my guys there. Now they're just with these people all the time. And of course, part of the deal was they had to sleep out there because they had to protect that generator. And so they had a little pup tent and they had sleeping bags and all that stuff. And so that was their home for the next several weeks at nighttime. And we had it anchored down in such a way that even in the daytime it would be very difficult for someone to take that. Then the wood, I just can't remember exactly how all the wood got there, but it was great 2x4s and planking and all that. That was something done by the group, and I don't know whether they got that donated or what. Like I say, I had to really stretch my memory to come up with the stuff that I'm talking to you tonight. So I can't recall how all this wood, and it was all brand new wood, 2x4s, 2x6s, post, and planking for the flooring for a stage. And so that shows up, and the group starts building that. My guys, they didn't get involved in that, building that thing, but they were around, and they would tinker around with the generator and make sure that thing was okay and protected. And of course, my concern all this time was that just did not want them to be detected because they were in deep, and then being out there, who knows what could happen to them. But they did a very good job, excellent job. I had to write a few notes here, believe me. So. As they started developing the property out there, as they developed it, they dug some large trenches that were going to be open latrines, if you will. And there were a few porta potties brought in, but nothing that would handle a crowd, but at least for those that were building the stage and stuff like that, had them there. But it was just basically determined, we're out here in the open, so people can, they got them, thought they got them away from where most of the crowd would be. These trenches where they could use them as their open toilets, if you will. So we're kind of sailing along. We're approaching kind of the end of November now, and lo and behold, our chief of police takes ill, and the word I got was he's been relieved of duty. So I think, hey, Merry Christmas. So they made Captain Chopin was the acting chief, and at the same time, we did not have a city manager because the city manager at the time was retiring and going elsewhere. And so the city government was kind of rocky. We had a solid city council at the time, but it just kind of threw a monkey wrench, I know, into the police department because it just seemed strange to us. And here I was answering to that particular chief. And so, but we carried on. Then we found out that in about, I think it was sometime around the 10th, 11th of December, that the new city manager was coming on by a gentleman by the name of Larry Rose from the state of Washington. And I'd never met him yet or anything. And I don't know in the police department at that time whether even the two captains, the acting chief, who was Captain Chopin, had met him yet. I'm assumed that he did. But after Chief Huck left, basically Captain Brown and I worked together closer. And so it became pretty evident to my guys that this thing was growing. They were hearing that all kinds of flyers went out. They were expecting and hoping for at least 25,000 young people. And you look at Sycamore Flats out there and you think, boy, 25,000 people here, and it's going to start Christmas Day. Are they going to be showing up here, for a week or two ahead of time, and we're going to have these people all over town, or they just descend upon us? We just had no idea whatsoever what may occur. But I know as I discussed that with the acting chief and Captain Brown, we said, we just got to prepare for this, because it may be a big flop. They may not have hardly anybody. But if they have anywhere near 25,000 young people, we will have a Woodstock event, if you will. And so it was decided then that the chief would contact every police chief in Orange County, just give them a rundown of what this is. It's supposed to start Christmas Day. It's supposed to be a one-day event, but we got to plan for longer, because my guys were telling me this thing will be longer than one day. Guarantee it'll be longer than one day. And so that, of course, that's all that information is what I passed on to the chief. And so every agency in Orange County, including the marshal's office and the Orange County Sheriff's Department, was notified that we may have to call for mutual aid anywhere from Christmas Day, or for sure probably the following day. And we'll need, if they're anywhere near, if there's 15,000 or 20,000 or 25,000, we're going to need to have a lot of police officers if we're going to remove them from that property. The schools were contacted. They were out for the whole week for Christmas vacation. They got the approval, the chief did, and approval to use the high school gym. Someone came up with the idea, what about the cafeteria? There was a smorgasbord, I forget the name of it, on Broadway at the time. They were willing to close down their store and relocate up at the high school for us. And because if we ended up with 300 or 400 officers there, someone's going to, they do get hungry. So, and then the police department was basically, some officers were staying right there in the gym at the time. And we got that all squared away. Then the captain, the chief, they said, where are we gonna have a command post at? And so they knew that this new city manager was coming on, and they wanted the council there, and at least the mayor and one or two council members for sure there, and so they picked, which I thought was kind of cozy, but the surf and sand. So, and they had a nice big conference room up there, and so then we decided, well, what are we going to do with our dispatchers and our female parking control officers and our record clerks and whatnot, because they're certainly going to have to be here operating. So arrangements were made for them that if this thing really exploded and we're going to be here 2, 3, 4 days, they would have rooms there because they put everyone on notice that there won't be leaving this building or the high school. You will not be going home. Um, um, so that those arrangements were made, and of course the uniform people here, and myself included, we saw that as the Ivory Tower, and that's where they would be, over there. So sometimes it doesn't hurt to have some folks not right here in your lap when you're trying to work. So that worked out and ended up to work out very well. Um, the high school gym was the big bedroom for some of us already, but definitely would be for if we get a few hundred officers. It was around December 22nd. Well, let me just back up. The new city manager is now on board, but like I said, never met him yet. Never laid my eyes on him at the time, but that's wouldn't be too unusual under all the circumstances. But so he was on board, and we started noticing some young people coming into town. Our undercover officers were picking this up and talking to him. Yeah, we heard about this. I'm from Illinois, and others were from Kansas and whatnot. That they read some flyers, saw something, and boy, they were coming out here because this is going to be like Woodstock in New York. And so a couple of them were starting to even pitch little pup tents and stuff up out there. And we, of course, let that go and let it just play its time out there. Then the stage was all built. They finished up that. It was a good-sized stage. They brought tables in. According to my undercover guys, they said, yeah, they drew a plan for me saying that these tables here, they're going to have all kinds of dope will be available for people and this and that, on and on. And they'd cut some the tree branches, no trees down, and collected all the dead wood they could so they could have, they dug some fire pits all over the place. And that's when it was almost an afterthought, but the Captain Brown says, I think we better start notifying the county fire department too. Because we could have a fire get away from us out there. So that unfortunately was kind of a last thought because we were all thinking just police. And so that came about. So they were placed on notice and whatnot. And now we come up to Christmas Day. And I know I kissed my wife goodbye about 5:30 in the morning and says, well, I don't know when I'm going to be back home, but you know where I'm at. So I came down and all at that time, starting that morning at 6:30, all police employees had to be here. Every record clerk, parking control. We didn't have dog officers then. That was handled by the SPCA at the time, and every officer. And we had a briefing here and right here where we are sitting today, and then we had lone patrol cars from Newport Beach, in addition to our police cars. So we had plenty of police cars that our officers could drive. It's about 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, we started noticing cars starting to roll in, and they just kept coming and coming. And they were coming from the south. They're coming from north end. They were coming down El Toro Road, down Laguna Canyon Road, and they started pulling into this place. It's like everybody knew exactly where it was. And it was hard to believe, and then we thought, well, maybe these are probably just local Orange County people, and a lot of them were. But then, as all of a sudden the highway started getting all blocked up and everything was just happening, just boom, boom, and we saw that where this thing looks like it's going to really build up, and it's going to build up fast. The decision was made by the Ivory Tower that, boy, if this keeps up, we're going to have to close down Coast Highway, and we're going to have to close down El Toro and Laguna Canyon Road, keep these people out. Well, I mean, boy, if you tried to do that today, I'd hate to think what you'd have on your hands. But also on everyone's mind was, well, this is Christmas, and people are coming here, relatives and friends to people here. And once you leave, you weren't coming back in. And that was decisions that, not that I'm trying to get out from underneath anything, but I had nothing to do with that. That was the Ivory Tower. That was our elected officials. That was the city manager, and that was our command staff of the police department. That was their decision to make. And so it was around noon, sometime around there, the town was closed down. It just locked down. Traffic was backed up clear into Corona del Mar. It was backed up into Dana Point area. It was backed up from the freeways and El Toro. And people just started parking their car and walking in. Well, there's no way you're going to stop people from walking in. We didn't turn into Nazi Germany yet, but there's just no way that you're going to stop. And they were just coming in from all directions. And it was just filling up and filling up. And of course, then they had guys up on the bandstand, and it was really starting to heat up. It was kind of a chilly day, and we thought, well, how is it really possible all these people are going to go home when the sun starts going down? So we started thinking that kind of early on in the day. There were quite a few vans and school-type buses and cars among the people, and they parked them on the north side mostly. After it was sometime later, I forget the time, but it was later in the afternoon. I had heard from Captain Brown that whoever they were in the state were, I guess, threatening, you've got to open up your roads. You cannot block a state highway, which was Coast Highway. You just can't do it. And it was falling upon deaf ears. And it was, we talked about it later. Nothing really came about it that was made public, but there was some really upset state people. It was finally open late Sunday. And so some of the people that waited that long were able to visit their families and friends here. But that opened up a floodgate of people coming in, boy. But prior to that, it was about 2:30 in the afternoon or so. I was out in the canyon, and I was going out to meet with my guys. Still, we'd not disclosed who they were or anything, but I was going to meet them at a certain place, which was well hidden, just to get an update on things. And I was out there and saw an airplane. I saw an airplane circling around, and it was a white-colored, small plane like a Piper Cub or something, circling. Well, somebody, taking photographs, because there were some others that got the word, and they would fly over and they were taking pictures and whatnot. And it made a big loop around, and as it got in front of it along Laguna Canyon Road, all of a sudden, out of this plane came thousands of postcards. And they were about large postcards, about like that. And they were gray in color. And they just were floating down on top of all these people and whatnot. And so I drove then out to the Laguna Canyon Road there, and a couple were falling right down on the road. And I got out and I picked one up and I looked at it, and it was a gray card, and it had a sketch of a female Indian woman, as I recall, with her arms up like this, looking up at the sun. Well, that was a tab of Orange Sunshine LSD on it. That was the sun. And I thought, holy moly. Well, my guys, they see me out there, and they actually came out and they said, "Hey, Sarge, these cards, every one of these cards, there's more acid now than you can even think about." And so I noticed that on the plane, there was no marking on that plane. There's no numbers on the bottom of the wings, nothing. It was clean. And then it went towards El Toro, and then it went out towards San Juan. At that time, San Juan had that little airport down there, but to my knowledge, it didn't land there. And to my knowledge also, we never found out where that plane came from. The folks out in the canyon, the Brother of Eternal Love, the Bell people, they gave credit for it. That was their idea. So then, I relayed all that to the Ivory Tower through Captain Brown, that we're going to have some real serious LSD problems here. We're going to have people freaking out, and well, sure enough, we did, and we really had people, just going absolutely crazy, and a lot of them had to be, we had ambulance come out and take them to the hospitals. They were really flipping out. The other thing, too, that was kind of went along with all that after that, some of them got so high that out there, my guys were reporting, they said, "You won't believe it, but we got just open sexual relations going on." I mean, they're here, over here, here. People running around naked. They were loaded on LSD, and they were just freaking out. But they said it's really a sight. And so we came. The band was still cranked up, going good. Well, now we're getting around 5 o'clock, and it's starting to get a little like it's going to. We know now, or just before daylight savings times, a month ago there, 5 o'clock comes, and boy, by 6, it's dark. And well, these people aren't going anyplace. And there's no way we're going to go in there at nighttime to think we're going to get them out. We had, some folks that really wanted to try to help them, which did not go over well with the police, to be honest with you. And it could be the folks here in the room here, I don't know. But I know some of them, and they wanted to help these people, especially the ones that were freaking out, and some were sick. And we had a couple pregnant girls out there at the time too, and so that was kind of a rub with what the police were doing and what they wanted to do, and so we thought, well, tomorrow morning this will probably all come to an end. So I know it was about 10 o'clock finally at night. I ran up to my house up on top of the road where we lived to say hi to my wife, and I know her sisters were there, and nieces and uncles and all that, and I just basically said hi, and kissed my wife, and back down. I came down. I said, I don't know when I'm going to be home. This thing, I said, is going to go on a while. So came back down. I got a couple hours sleep in the gym. Back up about 4, and we were making plans what we're going to do. Well, we go out, and daybreak comes, and it's like nobody left. And the music, now it was different people were up there now. It wasn't the same group that was there, that either were paid, I don't know where that group came from, but others were up there now. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, we started making some announcements. Folks, you're going to have to leave, this and that. Well, they would give us the international sign, and it just wasn't working out at all. And the day actually got away from us, and we thought, oh, good Lord, it's going to get dark, and well, some people did start leaving. There were some that started leaving. Some of them were trying to drive their car out of there. Others were blocking them from driving out. They didn't want them to go, and it was kind of an ugly mess. And then it just plain got dark, and all that stopped. And I regrouped with Captain Brown and the acting chief at the time back here, and said, we're going to have to tackle this tomorrow. And I said, my guy is saying that there's some saying they're never leaving. And but I think the good Lord upstairs was watching out for us and decided, I'm going to give that group some real cold weather, because it really got cold that night. And the next morning, we had frost all over. It was out the canyon, there was frost, and it was frosty out there. And there was a lot of people that were hurting because their fingers were frozen, and they wanted out of there. We had complaints from people that lived out in the canyon. Their lawn furniture was gone. Part of their fencing was gone. Their stored firewood was gone. We still don't know exactly how, because we had El Toro and Laguna Canyon Road. It was totally blocked off, and we had barricades there and this and that. Well, they came, I think, on both sides off the road, and they came in and they ripped off some of those yards there. So those people were really upset, and then the pressure was, when are you going to get rid of them? You got to get rid of them. And there was others, and people were still upset here in town because they couldn't go where they wanted to go, and it was miserable. But that cold weather worked on our behalf, because a lot of them just said, "Want out of here." My undercover guys came up and said, if you can only get some buses here, because people, they have an idea where their car is, but they point, because they were going to go, well, where's your car, man? Could you get us out of here too? Can you come by and pick us up? Oh, we don't know where our car is. Well, where do you think it? Well, I don't know. I walked in from that way, and I walked in from that way, and it was a real mess. And that's what they relayed back to us. And I relayed that to Captain Brown, and he's, we were both talking. He said, well, school's closed. Maybe we can get the school to allow the buses. Well, sure enough, they worked that out. And so we had school buses went out there, and we had big signs on them: north, east, west. And they started just, we had a couple, our own officers out there saying, okay, where do you think your car is? Oh, go to that second bus down there. You go there. You go to that first bus. And then the buses would go, they'd come back, go and come back, go and come back. Some of those that had their cars there now could get their cars out of them. They were leaving. We said, oh, this is great. This is good. Okay, this is going to work. And that went on right up until it started getting it was going to get dark again. And we had it was about 1,200, I'd say could have been 1,500, that basically said, we're not going anyplace. This is our home now. And we're thinking, holy moly. Well, our force, we weren't going to be able to get them out. We had 20 regular officers and plus a couple sergeants and 2 captains, and I know those captains aren't going to get out there. So, I mean, we didn't have that many that we could think that we're just going to go in there, because half of them are high, and if they made up their minds they're going to stay, it's going to be nothing but a great big nasty fight. And so I took Captain Brown out there, and I said, here's the thing. I said, but we got to make plans. And he's, well, we just got notice from most of the police departments and the sheriff's department, their officers, they've got to go home tomorrow, period. Because New Year's is coming, and they've got things happening in their town that they want their officers there. So we devised this plan. We went back to the high school, and Captain Brown and I, and he went and he got the approval from the city manager and Chief Chopin that this was our plan, and that we would create 20 20-man teams headed by a sergeant to go out and station themselves on El Toro Road, out where Aliso Creek Road comes in, and where they had the pump station and all right there. That really wasn't all there then. There was a small pump station. And there's a trail system, nothing like what's there now. It would have been nice if it's not like it is now, but there's a trail system that you could go on up and then drop down into where these folks were. And then we'd have 5 20-man teams that would be out in front. Each team is headed by a sergeant. They would be parallel to El Toro Road, right at the entrance, and to be well seen. And that we were able to contact someone there at Orange County Airport, where they had a plane that had equipped with a loud system on it, voice system, and that he would fly over, be a passenger in it, but the pilot would take him around and circle around as the sun came up, that, folks, you got to get up and move to the road. And so that was our plan. We briefed the entire group over at the high school, and we had enough personnel, we had enough sergeants, and we formed the 20 10-man teams and the two, so we had 200 officers there in teams, and then the other 100 officers out front in 20-man teams. And we were bussed out there, and it was really freezing cold, boy. And we, just as the sun started coming, we started marching up in the back, and they gave me the great honor of being the first team to go in, because I know the area. And I did not know that back area like that. I'd never, but all the sergeants from the other departments and whatnot said, no, you got to be the leader at this thing. So that was a good privilege. I enjoyed that. We started hiking up there, and we got up there, and we kind of split up and made a kind of a U shape a little bit, where they could see us when the sun comes up, but we'd all have to go down this one trail that happened to go down. It was a narrow trail, not wide, but that we'd all have to file down that trail when the signal was given. And then the other guys, they were out front, and they started lining up. Light came, Captain Brown, we could hear the plane coming. He made a few circles, and the pilot got down pretty low, and you could hear them on the PA system telling them, okay, get up and walk towards the street. Don't bother to take anything with you. Just move out. Well, some of them came out of their, we could see them come out of their sleeping bags, and some of them were, you know, pulling down the pants and showing off their fannies to the plane that's going circling around there, and whoever that was in there was, they could look at that, and then they were giving the finger and yelling and screaming, and by now everyone's kind of awake, and that's about the time Captain Brown gave the order. We came down, our teams came down, and he's still flying around telling them to take a look around you. And they're coming in from the front, the front officers are, and we just got them all surrounded. Our teams in the back said, okay, you follow those officers that you're looking at up front. And if you can pick it up and carry it, fine, but we're not stopping. And there was more stuff left there, and the Carter had pills. And we just put them all out there to the highway. And we said, where do you think your car is? And some pointed. And we said, well, you can wait for buses here or you can walk. And they basically, we never had to have a bus go out there. They started walking, except for the group, and the largest group, they pointed west towards Laguna. So we took half those officers, because altogether we had 300 officers. And we just herded them right down Laguna Canyon Road. And as we got just on the other side of where the school is there, on the left side after you, where El Toro comes in, the homeowners there were cheering and clapping and carrying on. They were so happy to see this group being marched down the street. City crews were all set, and the city had some other people, cleanup people lined up. They were out there. We had a big bulldozer out there. They dug a giant hole. Just a giant hole. And these teams were going out there picking up all the stuff, everything. The lumber went in first from the stage. That they ripped that apart and put that in there first, and sleeping bags and jackets and you name it, everything went in this hole, and it was deep. And then it was lit on fire. And we had the fire department out there. And they were making sure that fire wouldn't spread, and that everything out there just burnt right to the ground, was done. The fire department poured all kinds of water on it and whatnot, make sure it was out. The bulldozer then, boom, and buried. And every time I drive by there, I think, boy, there's a lot of stuff there buried, but it's deep. It's not going anywhere. And they cleaned that whole area up where those people were. And I mean, it really looked nice, but it was a little manicured because there was nothing left there hardly, except for the sycamore trees. And thank God, and they're still there today. And I almost have to salute them every time I see them, thinking, well, it's just great that those trees weren't cut down. It's a wonder they weren't cut down, or have no branches on them today and just sticks up there. So that is kind of the conclusion of that whole situation as I recall. Like I say, I had it out of my mind for 45 years. Just a little follow-up here. We all finally got to go home then. That was on the fourth morning. And after they were out, and I think I got home probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was on Friday, I believe, that because we were coming up, it was the Friday before New Year's, the police department, myself and the other supervisors got word that the city manager wanted to have a meeting with all of us after the New Year's. So we're all thinking, did I do anything wrong? Or it just seemed odd, and we weren't getting much information. And Captain Brown, who I was closest to, he said, "That's really all I know too." He says, "It's news to me too." Well, sure enough, the following week, we had a mandatory meeting, every police employee, and there was about 10 municipal service employees had to be at that meeting because they were here during that entire time too. And so we came into this room, and we're all lined up there, and we're sitting there, and in walks the acting chief, Captain Brown. The sergeants were all in the front row like this, myself included, and city manager walks in, and he introduces himself, and he was being very stern at the time. And I think, He said, "I'm going to start by sharing something with you." We thought, He said, on Christmas afternoon, I drove out to Forest Avenue and Laguna Canyon Road, and the big checkpoint there. And there was an officer there. And he came over to my car and, "Sir, you can't go out the Canyon Road there unless you live out there." "No." "Do you live out there?" No, I don't live out there." He said, "Well, I'm sorry, you'll have to turn and go there." Well, I'd just like to go out and just see everything out there." And he says, "Sorry, sir, I can't let you go out there." And he says, "Well, I'm the city manager of Laguna Beach." The officer looked at him, and the officer was, some of you may know him, George Pletz. And he was the oldest officer on the department. He was a lieutenant years ago, gave that up, and then became our photographer and did fingerprint work and things of that nature. And he hadn't been in uniform for probably 10, 12 years. And he was in his uniform because everyone had to be in uniform. So it was George out there. And George says, "Well, I'm sorry, sir, you just can't go out there." So he says, "But I'm the new city manager." Well, George, he just didn't know anything about the city manager, whether it's new, old, or who he was. He just knew, "I don't know you, and I think I'd know you if you were the city manager." And so he says, "Well, can I see your driver's license?" So the city manager takes his driver's license out, gives it to him. He says, "You're the city manager, and this says you live in state of Washington?" He says, "Everyone has an ID card that works in Laguna Beach. Let's see your ID card." "Well, I don't have one." And he said, this officer, and he hadn't named him yet or anything, he says, he just looked at me and says, "Oh, you don't have one, but you're the city manager of Laguna Beach." "Sir," he says, "see that big bus right over there?" And there in the, just off Forest Avenue where you turn into the employees' parking lot, there's this giant bus. It says Orange County Sheriff's Department across it. Well, that's their transportation bus for prisoners. He says, Mr. Rose looks over there. He said, I looked over there. "Yeah, I see it." "And see that tow truck right there in front of it?" "Yes, I see that." He says, "This is what's going to happen. If you don't turn around now and go, sir, I'm going to have you get out of your car. I'll neatly put my handcuffs on you, and I'm going to walk you over to that bus, and you're going to sit in that bus until a few more people get in that bus, and then you're going to go to Orange County Jail. Your car is going to be hooked up to that tow truck and go bye-bye." So he says, I left, and we were all thinking, God, what officer was this? And finally he says, "Could Officer George Pletz stand up, please?" Well, he was back over here on this side, and all of us about fell over. And George stands up. He says, I believe you were the officer that, somebody says, oh, I remember you. Yes, sir. And Larry rose and said, he says, well, I want to thank you for being so professional. And he says, and that goes for all of you. He says, I've been in this business a long time, and I've worked with a lot of police departments, but you folks did the most outstanding job under the circumstances you were faced with. And he praised us like you couldn't believe. And he says, and if all of you are like George Pletz, this town is really, really fortunate. And he says, now, I want you all to know, I appreciate all the hard work you did and all. In addition to the paycheck that you're getting, your normal paycheck, you will have an additional paid 72 hours on that paycheck. And we about fell over, because in those days that was a lot of money. And so that got the council really moving pretty fast, and they came up with an ordinance for to handle such a thing in the future. And I believe it's like if you're going to have any type of situation like that, it won't be out in any place like that. It would almost have to be at the festival grounds, which really limits people from doing things here of that magnitude. But I think 2,500 people was the top limit for a single group. That law is still on the books this day. We've never had any request for anything like that since. The most you see are some of the folks that set out on out there in Main Beach Park facing the Coast Highway with some of their placards sometime, and some of the war veteran people and stuff. And we just never had an incident like that since. And so I know I'm happy the way it ended up, because when I worked in Newport Beach, we used to have some terrible beach riots. They were just plain nasty, and along with Huntington Beach at the time. And you could bank on it every summer, have 2 or 3, and they really got nasty. And probably the worst I was in was I was on a mutual aid team to Huntington Beach, and they really had one, and they backed about 50 of us officers into the ocean up to our waist. I mean, our guns were screwed up, everything was wrong. And that was, that's, and I worked for Newport Beach before I came here, and that was on my mind out here. It won't take much to get people to turn on you, and there's more of them than us. We'll probably win, but in fact, I know in my mind we'd win, but how? And so that's my remembrance. Like I say, 45 years. You can ask my wife. She said, "How are you going to remember that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." So I had to sit here and scribble notes for a couple of days. I'd come back to it, rip the page off, and then finally to get it somewhat organized. I probably missed a few things, but that was quite an experience for all of us. We had, I'll just quickly finish up. We had 2 officers of ours disciplined in that, which is remarkable, I think, for all that went on. But they had anything to do as far as being rough with the public or anything like that. One was for insubordination, that I actually brought that charge against the officer because we were all tired, we were all sleepy. We know for a fact that he was able to get some sleep along with several others. So, and those of us that were working 18 hours and 20 hours, we knew that he had not worked that long, but he had a station right out here at Forest and Broadway, and he just went out there and just laid down and decided, I'm going to go to sleep. And so that told him that I was writing him up in those charges, and there's going to be an investigation on it, and he could expect some real disciplinary action. About a week later, he decided to leave. The other incident was a gentleman found a camera in a case, a real nice, expensive camera, over here at Ocean and right over here by the Scandia there, and he brought it in to the police department and said, I found this, and it's a beautiful, expensive camera and camera case, and so it took his name and all, and the clerk, well, I'm back up. He came in about a month later and said, I turned a camera in, and blah, 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 and he said, well, we'll check with our property officer. They checked, and at the time it was George Blitz, and he searched it all over, and he said, I don't recall anything like that. And George was a fanatic when it comes to photography, so he would know. And he said, no, we don't have anything like that. So I was called up there to talk to him, and he explained it all to me. I said, do you know what the officer looked like? He said, yeah, he's really good-sized guy. He's big. I said, okay. So I knew who he's talking about, and it was a fairly new officer on. And so I told Captain Brown about it, and the acting chief, and I said, that camera's not in our property room. So I said, I'll go ahead and start an investigation on it. So I called him in, talked to him, and I could tell right off the bat, something's wrong here. And I said, I want to know the truth right now. Do you take that camera? Do you take it for your personal use? Yeah. I said, where is it? He says, at my home. And he's fairly new, and I didn't know where he lived. And I said, where do you live at? He says, out El Toro way. I said, I want you to go home and get that camera and come back. So I told the watch commander that I sent him home to get something. He was back in about 40 minutes, brought it in the case and all. And I said, I'll tell you right now, there will be a crime report on this. And in addition to an internal affairs investigation. And I said, I'm recommending, I'll tell you right to your face, that one, you be charged with this crime, so you go to court on it, and you're through with this department. And he says, if I resign right now, will this end it all? I said, I'm 99% sure that will, but I'll have to check with the chief. But yeah, give me your ID card, give me your badge. I want all of your property. If you have to go home and get it, but you're through as of now. So those were the two instances that we had with the officers, and it was sad that happened with that, especially with that one officer that stole a camera. I guess he thought that with all the ruckus around here, no one's going to come back and claim that, or ask to see if anyone picked up that camera that they turned in. So that was the only negative thing really that I recall that occurred. So I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone may have.
Hold on, we're going to pass out the microphone so we can get this all on tape.
Yeah. We have a limited amount of time, and we want to make it let as many people as possible speak. So please keep your remarks short, and you have to do it in a microphone because it's going on the cable channel and on the tape. So let's go right ahead.
Do you remember who any of the city council were at that time?
Well, one was Ed Lower. Uh, yeah, so you remember Ed Lower. Boy, I can see his face.
Howard Dawson?
Yes, yes. And I don't know if, I don't think Howard was on yet. He could have been. His wife is here. Was Howard on the council at the time in 1970? I th- I- Yeah, I thought he came on later too.
Yeah, he had come on later
Right.
than then, but we knew all about everything out there, and also about your taking out the guru, Timothy Leary, the LSD guy.
Well, that, I was here, came to work for Laguna on September 1st, 1968. And I know in Newport at the time, we had a we had a new chief from LA. He was the captain in LA and then became chief in Newport Beach. And then about the same time, an LA captain came here. Harry LeBreau was the chief here when Glavis was the chief up there. And I lost my train of thought. Yeah. And so we really had a hard line on drug use in Newport Beach. I mean, we hit it hard. Of course, we had, almost 3 times the officers Laguna Beach had, and it never got a foothold like it got here. Because like I say, around the Taco Bell area and our beaches and the canyon, the dope problem was just horrific here. I never kept a count, but someone did count up my arrests, and they said it was over 2,000 arrests that I personally made for narcotic violations in the 5 years I worked narcotics here. And what had happened was it was the day after Christmas. Yeah, it must be a thing with Christmases for me because, but it was the day after Christmas, 1968. About 11:05, I thought, well, I'll make one more swing, and I'll go out to Woodland Drive and just drive in there. And if you know Woodland and Victory Walk and all that, I mean, you only drive 500 feet one way and back up and go 200 feet this way, and you're back out. But it was a lot of dopers in there, and a big organization that was really pushing LSD and hashish, and they're the ones that had surfboards that they'd hollow out and fill up with hashish and send them over to Hawaii, and so that way they snuck them by and got them on airplanes and boats and everything else without being detected. So I thought, well, I'll just swing in there and see how my good friends are there, which I was not popular at all with any of those people out there at the time. So I drive in, and there's a car starting to come out, and it stops. And I pull to the right, and I can't go any further because I have a telephone pole about 10 feet in front of me, and that car's just stopped there, and then it pulls up a little bit and stops. And I think, what in the world's going on here? Can't they see this? At that time, we had black and white police cars here, and they can't tell that I'm just sitting here. And so I get out of the car, and I walk over to the driver's window, and I see, as I walk up, I see this young guy in the back seat, long black hair, and he's looks like an animal. He just, his nose is pushed against the window, and he's growling, and I mean, he's just going crazy in the back. And then there's this gray-haired guy up front, and he's turned, and he's talking to a woman, and I don't know what he's talking about. Finally, I tap on the window. He rolls down the window, and I look at him, and I think, no. I said, do you have a driver's license, sir? You're blocking the road here. Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Pulls it out. Holy moly, Timothy Leary. And the aroma is just of the marijuana is just coming out of this car. And he keeps turning around, pushing this kid back. This kid is coming over the front seat, pushing him back, And those days, you don't have all the fancy radios and equipment that you wear today, and so I have to back up to get the microphone out of my car to say, I need a couple follow-ups here now. And now some of the ones in Woodland Drive are coming out, and they're yelling. They know who it is that I've got stopped there, and all I can hear is, Purcell, that's Purcell, that, and all these names, Hey, we're going to kick your rear, and blah, 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 blah. And so a couple of the officers arrive. Long story short, take them out. I placed them under arrest, all three of them. Find drugs in the car. On the son, he had sewn in little pockets, and she had all kinds of pills and stuff in a rabbit hat. I thought it was a hat because she kept trying to put it on her head, but it would come off. And well, it was a purse that she was trying to put on her head to keep me from, I guess, going through the purse. And so then that and a lot of people said, "Oh, it's Timothy Leary that put you on the map, Neil. Put you on the map. You got the guru." And that was nothing but a headache. I mean, a big headache. My wife at the time worked at the beach house, and she was a waitress there. And before she became their head bookkeeper, and he and his wife would come in there, and they knew who she was. They found out, and they just taunt her until finally, I think Mr. Pike finally said, "That's it. He'll never be in this restaurant again." And then, of course, the attorneys had a field day. I was 3 weeks on the stand in Superior Court, and they just drilled me and drilled me. I mean, it was something. But all the time I was there, the son was Mrs. Larry, and Sonny Boy. He would sit there and take paper, make little spitballs. He'd to his dad. And his dad would go like this. And finally the judge, McMillan, and he's a no-nonsense judge at the time, and he says, "Hey, bailiff, that defendant does that one more time, hook him up and get him out of here." So and George Chula was the main attorney, who I had many dope cases with him at the time. And so we went through that whole thing, and I'll never forget when he had to come back and face what his punishment was going to be. And when Judge McMillan read the fact that he was going bye-bye to state prison, Mama was going to go to Orange County Jail, and so was Jack, the son. He was going to Orange County Jail. And I remember I got up out of that courtroom, not to make a fool out of myself, and I marched right down to the restroom. I got inside, and I let out a U-Haul yell, scream of joy that you couldn't believe. And I'm sure they heard me. Some people had to hear me because it was so loud. But since that time, I mean, everyone has asked me for years, what was it like to arrest Timothy Leary? And I was the only one, I found out, that the charges ever stuck. In Texas, they didn't stick. He had a couple others, and one in Arizona, another one in California. Nothing stuck with him. Now, he went to prison, and 2 years, a little over 2 years he's in prison. He escaped from state prison. And we find out, and I just saw him the other day on TV, and you probably all heard of a gentleman called Bill Ayers, professor now, but Bill Ayers and his wife, Bernadine Dorn, they got married, and they were responsible when we had the groups that were going around bombing government buildings. And all the information I had was that he's the one that helped Larry escape. And he went from the prison to Washington. That's where they cleaned him up. They cut his hair, got him black horn rimmed glasses, got him in a nice suit and stuff. And he and his wife got on a plane and they went to New York. From New York, they went to Algiers. And they met up with all people, Cleaver, who was a black, another real nasty individual that hated the white world. And Larry was so bad there, Cleaver got rid of him, said, I don't need you, because he was bringing heat down on him. So he and the missus go to Switzerland. Well, in Switzerland, you can't touch him. Can't do anything with him. Well, then she left Larry, and she was hidden out for a while, and then finally she did make it back, and she finished her sentence. He stayed there, and then he got hooked up with another woman. One of my narcotic officers and we had hit the Casa Laguna Hotel down here at south end of town. And we hit an apartment up there. We could smell pot coming out of it, knocked on the door, did the notice. The kid opens the door, and this whiff of pot comes out. And of course, we push ourselves in there then, say narcotics officer conducting narcotic arrest. It was Larry's son-in-law. He's married to his daughter, Larry's daughter, Susan. Susan's not there. He's there with his tiny little baby. And it was their baby. And the apartment, I mean, it was just an apartment with a bathroom and a closet, and that was it. And so told him, he was under arrest. And he couldn't have been any nicer. Oh, please don't arrest me. I'm watching my baby, this and that, and on and on and on. In those days, we didn't write tickets. They're marijuana. We just arrested him and we booked him. And so when I was searching the closet, I saw some letters in a drawer and pulled them out. I see one from Switzerland, and it just had some initials on the back, and it was addressed to Susan. And so I went, open it up. I read it, and I couldn't believe my eyes. He's put in the letter that he and his, I guess, wife then was going to fly from Switzerland to Afghanistan. Well, Afghanistan, feds can pick them up there. Our feds can. And so I thought, holy moly. So I took down the information, and I said, no, this whole thing's going with me. And so we decided that for the sake of the little baby and all, okay, we couldn't find any other cigarette, marijuana cigarette, other than the one he was smoking. You get in the break of your life, only because of that little baby. And we left, because as far as I'm concerned, we had a gold mine right now. And the next morning, my other narcotic officer, Bob Romaine, he got a hold of the federal people. At that time, it was called Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. Now it's called DEA. And said, hey, this is the information my boss came up with last night, blah, blah, blah. This is going to happen, this and that. And they got him in touch with the federal agent in Afghanistan. Read it to him, and he said, I'll be waiting for him. And sure enough, about a week later, Larry flies in there. They meet the plane there, the feds do. Everybody's off the plane. They ordered the plane to be refueled, kept Larry and his new wife on the plane, and flew him back New York and back to L.A., and he was picked up and thrown back into state prison. So, And unfortunately, I never heard what happened to the two twin brothers, the one that was Larry's brother-in-law, but Susan, she kind of went downhill bad and then in jail committed suicide. His other son, Jack, the one that I arrested, last I heard, and that was probably in about 1980, 82, something like that. He was living in San Francisco, so that's my Leary venture.
It's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I know we have a lot of people who want to talk. We do have limited time, so keep your comments as clear and brief as you can. I started over here. I told this gentleman he could be next, and I'll come back over to you there.
A quick question, and thank you for making your presentation tonight, Chief. How many people at the peak were there at the happening?
Well, to me, we found it hard, but the flying over it, it looked like it could easily been 20,000.
Yeah.
I don't think it hit 25,000, but it could have, because there were a lot of people that came and then would leave, and leave.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't there, they had no intention of staying there, but they just wanted to see what this was all about.
And do you remember who the main headliner was? The musical group?
No, I don't. I sure don't.
Hold on, I told her next. Here you go.
Oh, thank you. Chief, my name is Sunny Taylor Colby, and my boyfriend Bobby Lee Gregory and I had a wonderful time at that event. And I know there are folks here that really enjoyed it as well.
Remember the blonde hair?
Well, having also married a gentleman who became Chief Gerald Gates' adjutant, I have an understanding of the police story now. But to get this from you, I was 18 years old. I would never have understood the backstory. So to hear this tonight is really, really very interesting for me. But I also am thinking that there's an opportunity. We have a group here of people who were at the event. We also have you, sir. And I think at the end, if anybody would like to join me, I'd like to ask you if you'd pose for a picture with us all. I would love that. Would you like that? I'd love that. So, yeah, I'd love that. Thank you.
You were there and want to say something? No, maybe at the end. Okay, anybody else?
Wait
On
till
the
you get the
mic, hold on.
microphone.
We won't go on the recording unless you go on the mic.
What happened to your program with the two undercover? Was it successful?
Yes. Because we were short on uniform officers, we ended the program with them buying any more dope, and they'd been through enough, believe me, and they were getting tired of it also, and so we were able to arrest. I would say about 10 people, maybe a dozen altogether, and most of those were right down at the Taco Bell area, because that's where they did most of their business.
Neil, can you
Yes,
tell them
Barbara.
about starting the walk-around program?
Pardon?
The walkabout program?
The walkabout program.
Walk-around, where the officers, under your instructions, went and helped people from the boom boom room.
Oh, yeah, that's Barbara brought up the program that started called a walk-around program. Down at the time, the Little Shrimp, it's now the Mexican restaurant there, but we had the Little Shrimp, and then right there by Coast Inn, they had a bar there that was mainly gay, and then across the way, the Fleur de Lis, that was a gay bar. That was the least of our problems. I say problems, I mean, they just didn't create any type of problems. We were faced with the problem of a lot of the gays, especially on the weekends, would find a partner or something, or a friend, an acquaintance, and go down on the beach and engage in sexual acts. Well, those beaches down below, I mean, it's so dark that you couldn't see anything anyway. But what started occurring was you'd have some of the Marines go in there and act like that they were gay and choose one they thought probably had some bucks on them and say, hey, let's go down the beach and, I'll do this and I'll do that and you can do this to me. And so they'd go down the beach. Well, they'd get the living daylights beat out of them. And then the other thing that was happening was that on the weekends, it was kids from the outside area were driving down, and they'd go by slow down and go by the Little Shrimp there and start yelling out all type of derogatory names and about gays, and just it really got out of hand. So I got a couple officers that would be willing to do it. First of all, we wanted to be in plain clothes and walk with a couple members of the gay community that were trying to also come up with a plan to do something about this, because some people are really getting hurt, and others, I mean, they couldn't be standing outside without being called names and really nasty names. And so our officer would, he'd be standing there in the car, load kids would come by, and he'd jot down the license number. And then he'd call that into the dispatcher. The dispatcher would then run that license plate, see who it's registered to, and 9 times out of 10, it was somebody out here at Mission Viejo, Laguna Niguel, Dana Point, and then go through the cross index, find a phone number, phone them up, and say, do you have a young son or daughter driving your car in Laguna Beach? And of course they first say, oh, what's happened? No, nothing's happened except for that car was seen, and tell him what happened. Well, when he gets home, we'll take care of that. That won't happen again. Well, whether they did that or not, I don't know. So that worked out pretty good. Then we decided, okay, we'll make a better showing because we're still having trouble at the beach. So the officer was in uniform and would walk with a member of the gay community. And we'd go down, light up the beach, this and that. And after a while, word just got out, boy, you come to Laguna, don't go down those beaches. I mean, even the gays people, I guess, go with the police officer and you get arrested. And so that program worked out, I think, very well.
Do you have any other questions? Thank you very, very, very much for coming, and thank the chief.
You're welcome.
I do want to remind you that we would like to have you as members and participants in many of our events. Our next program, Carol Phelps is going to give. I don't know if you want to say something about it or not.
Before you go on with that, hold on just 1 second. I actually want to recognize William Kirkley, who's doing a documentary on Orange Sunshine. So if you want any more information about this, I'm trying to get tickets to see it. It's at the Newport Beach Film Festival, and he told me they're opening up a third night, so I can get tickets now because the first 2 are booked. So if you guys are interested in this topic at all, check out that Newport Beach Film Festival. Thanks for coming.
Carol, do you want to say anything or just mention the date or what?
I didn't ask you to talk about Super Cop.
Oh,
I was thinking about, can I take those?
Yeah. Can I get those back sometime?
the next program is here
Case I
on May 11th. If you didn't hear what she
You'll see
said
in-
there.
you'll see in
And
there
thank you
really
very much for coming.
rough notes.